We live in a world where people are constantly searching for shortcuts. They want the quick fix, the magic pill, the overnight success. But life doesn't work that way, and deep down, we all know it. The truth is much simpler and honestly a little less glamorous as consistency, discipline, and mindset. That's all you need. Consistency is boring, but it's powerful. It's showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's doing the same small things day after day, even when no one is watching, even when no one is applauding. Because consistency compounds. It takes what looks like nothing today and turns it into something unshakable tomorrow. Most people quit not because they lack talent, but because they lack consistency. Consistency is the quiet force that most people overlook, but it's the very thing that separates those who dream from those who achieve. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy. It's not the kind of thing that wins applause in the moment, but it's the thing that wins the long game. Consistency is the daily choice to show up, even when the motivation is gone, even when no one is watching, and even when the results are invisible. People think success is about big moments, about breakthroughs and sudden opportunities, but those big moments are always built on a foundation of small, repeated actions that compound over time. A person who goes to the gym once and expects a transformation will quit in frustration. But the person who shows up every day, even for just 30 minutes, will wake up 1 year later with a body, a mindset, and a level of strength they never thought possible. That is the power of consistency. It multiplies your effort, it magnifies your results, and it creates a momentum that cannot be bought or borrowed. Consistency is also the enemy of excuses. Everyone can be motivated for a day, for a week, maybe even for a month, but consistency asks you to push through when the spark is gone. It challenges you to keep the promise you made to yourself, even when it would be easier to let it slide. And in those moments, you start to realize that consistency isn't really about what you're doing, it's about who you're becoming. Every time you choose to stay consistent, you are building trust with yourself. You are proving that your word means something even to yourself. And when you trust yourself, when you know you can depend on yourself to show up no matter what, you start walking with a confidence that no one can shake. Consistency compounds in ways you can't predict. Think of the writer who commits to just 1 page a day. At first, it feels like nothing. 1 page out of a whole book is insignificant. But give that writer a year, and now they have 365 pages, enough to publish a novel. Think of the person who saves a small amount of money every week. At first, the numbers are unimpressive. But give it time, and the interest compounds, the savings grow, and suddenly they have a safety net, then an investment account, then financial freedom. The world is full of examples of people who achieved extraordinary things not because they made giant leaps, but because they took small, consistent steps over and over again. Consistency is what transforms ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. Another thing about consistency is that it's boring, and that's exactly why it works. Most people crave excitement, they want change, they want something new, and so they abandon the very routines that were building their success. The athlete who sticks to their training plan, even when it feels repetitive, gains the edge that others lose. The entrepreneur who keeps making the same phone calls, sending the same emails, and building the same habits every day, eventually finds the breakthrough the inconsistent ones never reach. Consistency doesn't cater to your feelings, it caters to your future. It asks you to trust the process when you can't see the progress. And those who trust the process long enough always find themselves standing on ground that others never reached. But let's be honest, consistency isn't easy. It requires patience in a world that rewards speed. It requires humility in a world that chases attention. It requires you to play the long game while others are distracted by short-term gratification. And that's why so few people ever master it. It's much easier to quit, much easier to rationalize, much easier to convince yourself that skipping 1 day won't matter. But the truth is, consistency is less about what you do on the days you feel strong and more about what you do on the days you feel weak. Anybody can act when it's convenient, but consistency is forged in the moments when it's inconvenient. Those moments when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you're discouraged. That's when consistency is truly built. Consistency also teaches resilience. When you keep showing up, you begin to realize that setbacks don't define you, they refine you. You stop measuring success by immediate results and start measuring it by effort. You stop asking, did I win today? and you start asking, did I show up today? That subtle shift changes everything, because showing up consistently guarantees that eventually the wins will come. It might take longer than you hoped, it might look different than you expected, but if you stay consistent, progress is inevitable. It may be slow, but it is certain, and here's the most powerful thing. Consistency doesn't just change what you achieve, it changes who you are. It reprograms your identity. A person who runs every day becomes a runner, not because they won a medal, but because they built a lifestyle of consistency. A person who writes every day becomes a writer, not because they published a book, but because they live the identity of a writer. A person who leads with integrity every day becomes a leader, not because they were given a title, but because they consistently embodied the qualities of leadership. Consistency shifts you from doing something to becoming someone, and that shift is where lasting transformation happens. Most people underestimate what consistency can do in a year, and they overestimate what they can do in a day. They get impatient when the results don't come immediately, and so they sabotage themselves by quitting too soon. But the truth is, the breakthrough you want is probably sitting on the other side of consistency. It's not that your goal is impossible, it's that you haven't stayed with it long enough for it to unfold. Seeds don't turn into trees overnight, but with consistent care, they grow roots, they push through the soil, and eventually they bear fruit. Your goals are no different. Consistency is the water and sunlight that makes them grow. Consistency is the secret weapon because it doesn't rely on talent. It doesn't rely on luck. It doesn't rely on connections. It's available to everyone, but it's mastered by few. And the ones who master it, the ones who refuse to quit, the ones who choose steady effort over instant gratification, they are the ones who build lives that others call extraordinary. Discipline and mindset are the foundation of everything you want to build in life. And without them, consistency has no place to stand. Discipline is that inner strength that tells you what you need to do even when you don't feel like doing it, and mindset is the filter through which you see every situation, every obstacle, every possibility. Together, they are what keep you moving forward when motivation disappears, and motivation will always disappear. Motivation is temporary, but discipline is permanent when you choose to make it a part of who you are. Discipline is sacrifice. It's saying no to short-term comfort so you can say yes to long-term growth. It's waking up earlier than you want to. It's pushing your body when it screams for rest. It's turning down distractions that feel good now but steal from your future. Discipline isn't about punishment, it's about freedom, because when you are disciplined, you gain the freedom that comes from self-control. The freedom to live on your own terms instead of being controlled by your impulses, your habits, or your excuses. The truth is, discipline doesn't feel good in the moment. There is no applause when you choose to eat clean instead of grabbing junk food. No one notices when you sit down to do the work instead of scrolling on your phone. There's no instant reward when you save your money instead of spending it on something flashy. But those small sacrifices, those small disciplined decisions, are the bricks that build your future. Without them, there is no foundation, only shaky ground that collapses under pressure. And this is where mindset comes in, because without the right mindset, discipline feels like punishment instead of purpose. If your mindset tells you that every sacrifice is unfair, every obstacle is an attack, and every failure is proof that you're not good enough, then discipline will break you. But if your mindset tells you that every sacrifice is an investment, every obstacle is a challenge to grow, and every failure is feedback to learn, then discipline becomes your greatest ally. Mindset is the voice inside your head that either builds you up or tears you down. It is the lens you look through every single day, and it determines whether you see yourself as a victim of life or as the author of your own story. A fixed mindset looks at difficulty and says, "This is proof that I can't do it." A growth mindset looks at the same difficulty and says, "This is proof that I am growing." Two people can go through the same storm, but the one with the right mindset will come out stronger, while the other will collapse under the weight. Mindset is what gives meaning to discipline, and discipline is what gives power to mindset. One without the other will not last. A strong mindset without discipline is just positive thinking without action. Discipline without the right mindset turns into resentment, burnout, and bitterness. But when you combine the two, you create a force that is unstoppable. Think about it this way. Discipline is the engine, mindset is the fuel. The engine gives you movement, but the fuel determines how far you go. If your fuel is toxic thoughts, self-doubt, and negativity, then even the strongest engine will break down. But if your fuel is growth, gratitude, and perseverance, then the engine of discipline will carry you farther than you thought possible. That's why the two must work together, because one gives you the strength to act, the other gives you the perspective to keep going when acting feels hard. When you build the discipline to keep showing up, and you strengthen the mindset to see challenges as opportunities, you create a cycle of growth that feeds itself. People fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack control. They let their feelings make decisions for them. They say, I don't feel like it today, so I won't do it. I feel tired. I feel discouraged. I feel bored. But discipline teaches you to separate feelings from actions. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to do it. And mindset reminds you why you're doing it in the first place. It shifts your focus from the pain of the present to the reward of the future. Without that mindset, discipline feels empty. But with the right mindset, even the hardest work feels meaningful. Even the sacrifices feel worth it. That is why the foundation of discipline and mindset is unshakable, because it teaches you to stop living by how you feel and start living by what you value. Every successful person you've ever looked up to has built their life on this foundation. Athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, creators, they didn't get there because they were lucky, and most of them didn't get there because they were the most talented. They got there because they practiced discipline every single day, and they protected their mindset from negativity and doubt. They got up when they didn't want to. They trained when no one was watching. They worked when others quit. And they did it all because their mindset told them it was possible, and their discipline made sure they followed through. They didn't wait for motivation. They created momentum. And momentum is built by doing the small things over and over again, powered by the mindset that believes it's worth it. Discipline and mindset also work together in the darkest times. When failure comes, and it always does, it is mindset that reframes it. Most people see failure as the end, but with the right mindset, failure becomes the beginning of a lesson. It becomes a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. And discipline is what keeps you moving forward after the failure, because without discipline, you stop, you sulk, and you settle. With discipline, you take the lesson, you apply it, and you keep going. That is why people with strong discipline and the right mindset seem unbreakable. It's not that they never fall, it's that they never stay down. They rise not because they are stronger than everyone else, but because their foundation is stronger than everyone else's. Discipline sharpens you, mindset shapes you. Discipline is the external proof, mindset is the internal belief. One shows in your actions, the other shows in your attitude. Together, they create a rhythm that keeps you moving forward, even when progress feels invisible. They keep you rooted when the winds of distraction and doubt try to knock you over. They build in you a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't need recognition, the kind that doesn't crumble under pressure. That kind of strength doesn't come from motivation or inspiration. It comes from a life built on discipline and guided by mindset